Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, along with our guest at the table, Spencer Johnson. We're going to call Dave Secker. Let me call him right away. Dave Secker is a women's coach, associate head coach at NC State. He's been a guest before. We're going to talk tennis, mostly US Open, I think.
Good evening, sir.
Podcast episode 160. Johnson was a guest before.
Johnson, nephew of Jimmy Johnson.
My phone is not ringing.
I'm already on.
He's on?
I'm already on. I can hear you.
Very good, Dave Secker. No rings. No rings. Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. Our guest you've been on before. We have someone you know quite well at the table, Spencer Johnson. What comes to your mind when you think of Spencer Johnson? He just got out of his juvie center. He's been away for 2 years. What do you think?
I was trying to remember the names of his siblings. I remember Etienne.
Mm-hmm.
That's the name that sticks with you. And I'm trying to remember the names of his siblings. I always remember the Johnson clan coming from Colorado, from Utah during the breaks, seeing this young man. Obviously, I know his father quite well. I know his uncle very well. But I'm trying to remember the clan. You have to refresh my memory, Spencer, because it's been a few years.
You're number 5. Give us the other 4.
Yeah, I'm the youngest, so my oldest brother, you remember Dave, is Ethan.
Yeah.
And then Lauren. And then there was Ani and Etienne, and then there's me. That's the clan.
Etienne used to come and play with you. I don't remember your older siblings as well, but I always remember Etienne used to come. That's a name that I always remembered.
Yeah, she would come quite a bit.
Yeah. I remember when you were getting started, your dad was like, how do I talk to my son and coach him at the same time? Like, well, you're asking the wrong guy.
Yeah, it's great to have Spencer visiting. He's going to UCLA. He'll be a freshman. He's back from 2 years at LDS mission in Argentina. Wendy and Joey, proud parents of. But I think he's going to pass on going to UCLA and become a guest on our podcast. He's going to do the promos, the commercials, and thought he's good looking enough. Don't you think that would be skip UCLA and do that? Don't you think?
I think I'm in a position to say that college is overrated. I mean, I think just make the quick money, you know. Just take the quick money and off you go.
Money. Coming back to college, don't let the classroom interfere with your education. I think Mark Twain said that.
I don't think there's anything at UCLA that's going to distract him from his education or his studies. No, nothing to look at that school. It's dreary, boring.
Plus,
no stimulation at all.
Plus, it's LA. There's not many people.
It's quiet.
Small town.
Quiet. Yeah.
No nightlife. No pretty girls.
No.
I think they're the only football team in the country that doesn't have cheerleaders.
That's right. That's why I went there.
UCLA.
They have football at UCLA?
A little.
When I was a kid, you didn't have many choices. There were only 3 TV stations, and you used to watch a lot of UCLA football games. I remember it was tradition to watch the UCLA-USC football game.
But this is the guy who doesn't know who the Wizard of Westwood is, Steve. So I mean, we'll see what he knows after the semester.
The Wizard of Westwood.
Coach Wooden.
He's got it
Coach
now.
Wooden.
He came up with that.
No,
he came up with that on his own.
It's in there somewhere because for sure he's had to read about that.
And the next thing is, Johnson, do you know any Woodenisms? I used a few today. Don't mistake activity for learning. Fundamental.
I like
Go ahead.
Be quick, but don't rush.
Yeah, that's a good one. The pyramid of success. The fundamental doesn't change. The speed at which you have to execute the fundamental changes. But let's just talk Johnson for a little bit. Talk tennis. Going to UCLA, freshman. I think that the 2 years away, any opportunity to gain maturity. I think also college campus is probably the most difficult place. You would know, being a college coach, one of the most difficult places to be professional. Like, it's Tuesday, let's celebrate. It's Tuesday. And Wednesday, let's celebrate. It's Wednesday. I think go ahead.
It's a lot to see and do in college when you're a freshman.
Yeah. I've done a lot of workshops for college teams in years gone by. I know the rules have changed, but You can tell a freshman a mile away. It's like the great Arthur Ashe, who played at UCLA, used to say about Welby Van Horn students. You could tell them a mile away. I think he has good math, though. I mean, the height is good, being lefty, the way the ball spins the opposite way. About 15% of players are lefty. With
fast courts out west.
Yeah, and
big lefty serves.
Johnson, why don't you tell us, being back here for a review, what do you think? Speak nice and loud, Johnson.
Well, it's been a minute since I've been here around the information, and it's been a good refresher course to be here and just hear the lingo, hear the language again. So it's been good.
I thought he was going to say it's been real, it's been good, but it hasn't been real good.
It's amazing how you can hear his father when he speaks now. It's great.
Big boy, big serve. When we say good math, our listeners could go back to a podcast called Tennis Math. I told two parents and their son today, he's a good tennis player, but he wants to be a better tennis player. Let's talk US Open. What do you think of Brad Gilbert coaching Coco Gauff?
I mean, seems to be working. I think she'd had a bit of a tough run, is my understanding. I've been at a few Grand Slams this year, and I think there was the feeling that she'd maybe stagnated a little bit or needed a little bit of a spark. She's obviously got on a good run. It kind of reminds me of when he got with Roddick, right? Remember, it was that 2003 when Roddick got on that run in the summer and then won the US Open, and Gilbert was with him, and Gilbert brings a lot of energy and a lot of ideas to the table, more about the other side of the net, more so than maybe her side of the net, right? But it certainly seems to be working.
No, I love Gilbert.
She's had a strong summer.
No, I love Gilbert. His first book is famous, obviously, Winning Ugly. His second book, I don't think that many people know. He wrote I've Got Your Back. But I remember reading his book a second time. It's a simple read. I've told tennis players have it in their shoulder bag. But I believe Roddick won 23 matches in a row, and I remember I was flying overseas. I said, all right, I'm going to take this and read it on the plane over. But, I think one thing that's very interesting is Gilbert has said before, I don't do grips. And there's so much being said about Coco, the ready position. You can just tell she has extreme grip on the forehand side. But I love him as a commentator, but I think also he's going to bring street smart, savvy, hitting bigger targets, mixing up the trajectory. I think, I
think a lot of young players can get caught worrying about themselves, right? And I think when you had Goffey on, he talked about being a competitor is about worrying about the other side of the net in the match, right? I think Gilbert gets you thinking about the other side of the net. I don't think he doesn't let players get too worried about themselves, more about just trying to solve the problem, right? I think in the on-court coaching stuff, I think he seems to have an knack for that. He's certainly done it with the players he's been with, man.
No, I think our listeners too, we talk about pro players. It's not a matter of, say with Coco Gauff, if the biggest word in the dictionary, if you could go back and say, well, if she was taught to do this on the forehand side, perhaps. But I think you have to just look at the positives. What she's done as far as work ethic and fitness. I mean, the competitiveness. Hats off to her and her family. It's amazing. Let me ask you this about Gilbert. Saw Gilbert in interview session with Andy Murray, who he coached, and Andy Murray said, "I thought you hated the drop shot." And Gilbert said, "No, I hated where you hit the drop shot from." What do you think? I mean, Alcaraz is hitting so many drop shots. What do you think of that in tennis and how that's being interpreted by Joe Public?
I mean, I'm like allergic to drop shot. I don't know. Like maybe because I had a terrible drop shot that I just think it's a terrible shot. But obviously on clay, I think it's a great shot. I think one of the reasons coaches get funny with the drop shot is because it seems to rear its head at like the worst time. It's like when players get under like extreme pressure, or there's like or they run out of ideas when they're stressed. That's when it appears. but it's certainly a good shot, especially with the rhythmic nature of today's game. It's certainly a very good shot if you're playing it in an offensive way and you're playing it not out of stress, but out of like tactical. Diana played a girl this year, a woman at Miami, Siegmund, who actually just lost to golf. And I watched a few sets and charted. I said, Siegmund's going to use this drop shot. She's going to come to the net and she's going to use the drop shot. And I think Siegmund went like 9 for 10, the 8 for 9 on the drop shot. Diana's like, you told me she was going to drop shot. I knew she was going to drop shot. I still couldn't win the points. Like, am I that slow? I said, it's a good drop shot. It is a good play. I think it's something we neglect as coaches to practice, maybe. And I think it's sometimes when you just see it at like the worst times when players panic and hit it, I think that's when coaches get funny about it, I think.
David, tell our listeners, they may be listening for the first time, when you refer to Diana, tell us first name, last name, a little bit of history.
Diana Schneider was a freshman on our team last year, and she's currently, I think, 85 in the world today. She just lost in the French Open qualies. She won around Australia and the French this year, lost to Australia in qualies of Wimbledon and US Open, and she's now going to be a WTA player. Yeah, she played Siegmund in Miami with the Masters event.
Let's go back to the drop shot. Arthur Ashe, you said that a lot of times people just cop out. They just drop shot out of nowhere. There's so many Arthur Ashe quotes. Everyone chokes. The player who wins chokes the least. But I also think on the drop shot, players are playing so far back. We've always said, hey, play more approach shots and drop shots. Dick Braden used to say drop shot when you don't need the point. Mm-hmm. For the longest time, and I know Jose Garris convinced Federer otherwise, but at one point, Federer used to say, I think the drop shot should be outlawed. It shouldn't be allowed. I do think, again, juniors, that they cop out, they tank. It's a mini tank when they don't stick it in the rally. But yeah, players are so far back. I think Alcaraz, he hits it as an invitation shot. It's an offensive shot. If people take a second look, it's going very high over the net. And what he's doing is not hitting it, and certainly he does at times hit it as an outright winner, but he puts the person so far off balance that he has so many options when they are awkwardly almost falling over, retrieving the shot, that what he can do is the easy pass or the easy topspin lob.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think he's also, when you get into that type of game, like the quick movement stuff, he's just the best at that as well. So if they engage him in like a drop shot or an angle, he's just so fast that he's going to get them. He's going to win those types of rallies, man.
Let's turn to Johnson. He's going to UCLA. What UCLA player has won 109 tournaments, Johnson? 109 pro tournaments. Belleville, Illinois. September 2nd, 1952.
Jimmy Connors.
James Scott Connors. Love James Scott Connors. I would say I'm more of a student of the game than a fan of the game, but I used to like to watch Jimmy play.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners, Johnson, what we've told you. What do you need to do when you get to UCLA? What's the first couple of things? What do you need to take? What are you looking for when you get there?
Well, I need to take a cone. I need to get a basket of balls. I need to find a backboard. Find someone to do baskets with.
Find a mirror. Yeah, you got to find 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there to do the routines.
I've seen your haircut. You need to find a mirror. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Find a barber.
Let's talk grips for a minute. One thing with Alcaraz with grips, as you've mentioned in our podcast before, you could just tell the ready position, what type of grip they have in the ready position. They have a semi-extreme grip. The racket's not centered on the neutral position, but does a very good job with grips. It's interesting to see these young kids with an extreme Western grip trying to hit a variety of shots. What comes to your mind when you think of Alcaraz?
Well, I think that's the point, right? Because he's not extreme, he does have the options, right? He can turn. With that forehand drop shot, he plays it more. He's turning. He's essentially got all the options, right? I think a lot of times, you said this to me. I've done this a lot. We have a lot of freshmen in the summer, and it's like one of our freshmen. There's a lot of work to do on the back end. If she turns with two bent arms, the racket face never closes. But the first 2-3 weeks of working on the backhand is we're working on the backhand volley, and that can be a little confusing, right? But players often get confused with that. But if you're turning with the racket like a backhand volley, you can hit the return, you can hit the ground stroke. But with Alcaraz, because he turns like that on both sides of his body, you can also just play the drop shot. You can also just chip the return, right? But that's the whole point with the drop shot is he can play it because he can take it early and play it. The players with the more, complicated grip, it's very easy to see when they're going to hit the drop shot, whereas he can turn it. Federer used to do that where he would turn like he was hitting a drop shot and then just hit through and play a deep one as well, right? And they actually have so many options because they're leaving the racket face open like a volley when they turn, right?
Dennis Vandermeer, what an artist, what a genius. If a kid came to him and he didn't have a loop on the forehand or the backhand, he would say, let me teach you the drop shot. And they would turn with the racket up high, teach him the drop shot. Then you say, now for this, guys, just set up like you're going to hit a volley, set up like you're going to hit a drop shot. And then from there, just hit your forehand. He wouldn't get into the whole dissertation on, well, okay, we're going to change your forehand. He said, well, okay, let's do this. So, and then on top of that, you can block the return of serve or steal the ace. You have the volley with the added follow through. Options, yeah. You can tell if some kid doesn't have the ready position, they don't have options. We have, appreciate you being on tonight. We have over 160 people that we've said, hey, you want to be a guest on our podcast? So we have a long list. Paul Wardlaw, you got freshmen coming in. What are like 3 things coming to your mind with Paul and Directionals?
It's video number 1 for our freshmen. Before we get into anything, we use it a lot in practice. That language of directionals, so that we can run practice in a way where it's not set like 2 cross 1 line, something like that. Instead of the player having to change direction on a set number ball, we want them to change direction on an inside ball using his language. It's not the law for us. We just explain it to our freshmen. It's a nice set of guidelines for decision making. It's a way we can communicate very easily, and it's a way we can practice at high speed where everybody knows where the ball's going as well. And we fundamentally use that language. I think sometimes it gets stereotyped as like just hitting the ball cross court. There's nothing about Wardlaw that says you can't hit down the line, you can't do this, you can't do that. But sometimes people over exaggerate it. It's just more about for younger players with some decision making stuff. And to be honest, I know we've talked about this, but you maybe stay away from it sometimes because you don't want the language to get confused with the swing parts, right? Like swinging inside out versus aiming inside out or inside in. But if you think about what we say, when you're rallying, you're waiting for a short ball, a change of direction, which is just an inside ball or an error. It's exactly the same thing. So we use that language a lot. I think it's an easy way just to get conversations going with the freshmen where they can get up to speed pretty quickly about what we're looking at.
Oh, I like the phrase, it goes across, if it goes across your body, go back cross court I told someone just the other day that we used to do a drill where we're going to play a set. All you can do is hit forehands. We don't do that drill anymore. That's all people do anyway. But at one point in tennis, inside out was a technical term. It meant to swing from close to away.
Yeah.
And now inside out, people don't think of it as a technical term. But
Spencer Johnson has heard the term inside out 48,000 times in his life.
He's just starting to understand it now.
just read the book, and now you know where the language comes from, right? Like it's not that complicated. People know the terminology; they just don't necessarily always know where it comes from, right?
Yeah, for sure. How about Novak and directionals?
We send a video. It's like a 30-minute video. I send them on Wardlaw to start with, and then I send them a video. This year's one was Djokovic versus Cilic in the final of Tel Aviv last year. It was on an indoor hard court. And I said, look, I would highly doubt Novak Djokovic has ever read the book Directionals, but you tell me if he's playing Directionals. And I mean, he does it. It's like a 6-3, 6-4 match, and I don't think he breaks like the flow of directions one time in the match. It's like it's like he studied the book, but it's obviously he just does it right. He understands the speed of the game and when to change and when to not change. But it's incredible. The players will watch a video from the '90s and then watch Djokovic play two completely unrelated events, and so they're just doing this instinctively. They just know at that level. I think it happens naturally, right?
Well, I think, for sure, there's so many great tennis minds around the world. There could be more, that's for sure. How's it go? Some open minds need to be closed for repairs. Dusan Vemic is a big fan of what we've put together, all these different systems. He was one of his assistant coaches at one time. Online with Novak, they took it down, but one of his fitness trainers, it was almost like he was demonstrating the Welby Van Horn balance points, body balance.
He's obsessive about balance, right?
Yeah, but anyway, the physical trainer was saying, it's just absurd how these kids on their serve and their forehands, it looks like they're almost falling over. Their balance is so bad. But Welby, you have to control, the grip, to control the racket, to control the body, to control the ball. Let's do this. You mentioned number one video. Here's another video that you've mentioned to me, and why don't you do the intro on why you really like it? Jeff Lewis, who's been with us forever, actually I've asked him to be on the podcast, and he said, yeah, next time I visit. And I do think it is actually in a lot of ways better to have somebody at the table, like good looking Johnson. Mother Wendy loves him. Joey's not sure.
You talk about what we talked about earlier. I this summer, I don't know what it is. Maybe I've been out of it a little bit in the last year. I haven't seen as many of the normal, but I've been approached by so many coaches asking me, I get a question about GreatBase now. Okay, here we go. There's always going to be something about the forehand, right? And it's like, when do you let players loosen up? Or but the top players, they do this and they do that. I said, no, they do for sure. And it's just a repetitive conversation I keep having at the moment. I don't know why, but, I think Jeff did a nice video. My master's was in sports medicine, biomechanics were part of that, but just understanding kinetics and kinematics, the difference between the two things, which is extremely important. I think there's another GreatBase video with Jack Croppel, I think, talking about reaction on the volley. It's like, this happens, and then, because of like the way the racket displaced, this happens. But you would teach this and just understand that this is going to happen because of it. But kinetics versus kinematics, understanding what you want to be teaching and what you want the player to focus on, and then what might happen as a result of that naturally. And I think a lot of times with us, when people come to talk to me, I'm sure you get this. I don't know how much you get this, but people say, well, you see this happening at this level. I say, yeah, they're not thinking about it. They're just relaxing. That's what happens when if you swing way inside out, and the racket can kind of wrap around. A guy like Alcaraz, Federer, Nadal, these guys who actually go all the way out with their arms straight, well, it will get a little bit wider, right? Because they're hitting further away from their body. But to try and teach that to someone who's, just west of a 5 on their grip, or a little bit past Western, who's got their elbows on their rib, I don't think that's going to have quite the same effect, So I think it's a nice thing. I saw it. It was a while back from Jeff. I don't know Jeff that well, but I know obviously we connect. He was out west a little bit at Kodo, and Jimmy and I were there after him. But I know obviously he spent a lot of time with Vic, and he's close with Andy and those guys, and you as well. But it's a nice, clean video that explains it.
Yeah, we'll play it here in a minute. No, Jeff, 14, 15 years old with, that's when I met him. He was Thomas Olerstedt from Sweden, who was running a club, Carrollwood Tennis Club, and Carrollwood subdivision in Tampa. I remember he went off to college, and he came back and they changed his game. And I said, hey, let's film you again. But no, an outlier. He's been in the tennis teaching world a long time now. He's out in Arkansas with his wife and helping some underprivileged kids out. But the listeners, there's so much on YouTube, but entertaining as well. I mean, my favorite Jeff Lewis video is the forehand spoof. You've seen that one, no doubt, right?
Oh, I've seen that one. That's a coda, yeah.
With, I think I've been in, over 10 countries with Lewis. Know the boy well, but let's play it, and then we'll come back and, someone told me just the other day, Henry Park, a young teenager who started studying the content as a 13-year-old. Now he's thinking about going off to college, so time goes by pretty quick. He was a guest on our podcast, and just like I was talking to you earlier, and said, hey, let's get together and just address this one issue. What he said is that, it begins and ends with the forehand. People see how we teach the forehand and they go, I'm running the other way. But they don't even get,
it's a little boring.
They don't get to the volleys anymore. But I think Lewis, I should say Johnson, I think he's capable of running the machine. Just hold it by the microphone.
All right.
Here we go.
Improving your forehand.
Improving your forehand, Jeff Lewis.
What's up, tennis players? Look, let's not make this game any harder than it has to be. There's a really good chance that one or both of these two tennis myths are holding you back from improving your tennis forehand.
Good music.
So our first tennis myth is actually a misconception and relates to the general shape of the swing. Many people think that the shape of the swing should be around your body in the shape of a merry-go-round and actually pull from outside in. This just isn't the case. It's understandable, however. We watch pros on TV swinging so fast, going out wide, and then we see their follow-throughs and their recovery pulling back horizontal, and it certainly can give the impression that the swing should pull across your body. But I want you to remember two words: kinetics and kinematics. Kinetics are the forces being exerted to get the desired result. Kinematics are things that unintentionally happen as a result of those forces. So on the forehand, for example, kinetically, the pros are actually trying to swing inside out away from their body. But what we see is a kinematic recovery and looseness and relaxation, which is inevitably centripetal forces pulling the body open or then being loose and recovering back to the middle. So this turns into this. Don't be fooled. It's important to remember that nothing that happens after contact has an influence on the ball. If pros are going down the line, they're trying to swing inside out away from their body to get the ball to go in that direction. If tennis pros are trying to hit cross court, they move their body a little bit more in front of the ball, but the swing up to contact is still going inside out to hit that direction. If a pro's running around their backhand and hitting it inside out, it's going inside out. If they're running around their backhand and hit it this way, outside in, it's still going inside out. One good drill you can do to get the idea of the correct swing shape is to go out to the courts and find a doubles alley. What you want to do is stand just outside of the doubles alley and turn with your backswing in the doubles alley. What you're going to try to do is drop the ball in the doubles alley, try to get the feeling of leaving your swing path in the doubles alley as long as you can, and then as a result, hopefully you should end up being able to hit the ball in the doubles alley. The other misconception we have from watching pros that can contribute to this idea that the swing path is horizontal or like a merry-go-round around your body intentionally is that the shoulders, simply opening up the shoulders creates power. That's how the kinetic chain works. It's actually slightly more complicated than that. Remember, it always works from the ground up. So for a right-hander on a forehand, for example, the foot pushes the knee, pushes the hip, the right hip, which will pull the right shoulder, but actually then all that kinetic energy needs to get translated into a linear stroke, which is going to go out to the target. So the irony of thinking your shoulder's pulling out is going to help you hit harder. Actually, by stopping the left shoulder, it's going to make the swing translate inside out even faster to hit a bigger ball. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that first myth. Before we get on to the second one, do me a favor.
Okay, let's go through that. We could listen to the second half.
Imagine if we had more Jeff Lewis's teaching.
Well, for sure. I mean, that's what, in this country, we could, your country, the old country, the LTA, the USTA, the alphabet soup. We've said that on the podcast before. Craig Tiley, he said, when he was with us for 7 years. So does a bang up job at Illinois. They go from, you know the story, our listeners know the story. They go from obscurity to the national championship, national title. And when he became the director of player development for Australia, now he's the CEO, but he said it'll take me 10 years to develop a network of coaches in Australia. And Rob Krychek, at that time, he was in a position where he could talk to who's who in the USTA because Austin was #1 junior or thereabouts. And there was meetings that I was in based on that. And yeah, we do have a network of coaches. And really, Jeff Lewis, he should be teaching tennis teachers. We could very easily, okay, let me name 20 guys. And but as you know, unfortunately, it's not in the cards at this point. But we'll working towards that.
Yeah, for sure.
Let me say
how simple of an explanation is that of how to hit a grand stroke?
Yeah, and I think our listeners too say, "Well, gee, I'd like to see the video." Well, go look at the video for one, because in listening to it on our podcast, there's no visuals, but we have this program, Tennis Tech. It's been brought up many times. Students, it was the first program of this type. We revised it into a full comprehensive curriculum. We used to study Braden tapes, and it was very easy years ago on a TV. You could just go up and darken the picture. So you couldn't see the picture, you could just hear the voice. And, then we would watch it where you just see the picture and no voice. And then watch it a third time. And that to me is studying tennis. Someone who's really has a masterful handle on the subject matter. And okay, we're just going to listen to it first, then we're just going to watch it, and then we do a combination of both. He said one thing: no matter what you do after the ball's been hit, it doesn't translate, doesn't affect the shot whatsoever. Braden used to do this thing, was so funny about bowlers. The bowler would let go of the ball, and then they would have this follow through like they were talking to the ball with their fingertips. And he goes, "It is gone. It's on its way to."
I mean, you have, like, when we have players like hit and hold on balance, and the number of questions, like, Dave, where should I follow through? I'm like, stick it up your nose. It's not going to make any difference. Like, it's wherever you want. Let it fly. Like, it doesn't matter. Just get through the hit. It doesn't matter afterwards. But I mean, what about, did pros do this and this guy does this? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, the follow through doesn't matter. We use the follow through to help teach what we're trying to do. It really doesn't matter that much.
Certainly it's an insurance plan, but the ball is gone. By the time you feel the hit, it's 7 to 11 feet away from you. Vic, you could do this with your players as soon as you get back on the court and the season starts. Maybe you've seen this done with us, is that you rally, you get to contact, and you immediately take your racket backwards. On the tennis tip, the second part we listen to that is Jeff actually hits the ball and lets the racket just fly out of his hand.
Yeah.
But no, certainly to have a tracking motion. It is troublesome where the kids are the windshield wiper, turn the doorknob. I mean, we're going through that with a player today. You film in a skill test situation, you film match play. You just off a courtesy feed, you film. I loved how Vandermeer used to say, "Okay, we're going to have you hit 10 balls. Here's the target, and we're going to just put where the 10 balls land," and people aren't even close to the target. With the alley. Let me do this. Johnson, let's go through UCLA players. I've got some notes here that comes to what Jeff, at the end of that tip, we'll come back to the second part. He has people just drop hitting the ball in the alley. Braden, the alley's like a sidewalk. And actually down the line, cross court aren't very good terms. You're going to hit to the center and you're going to hit off center. But just using those terms, say, okay, it's the down the line sidewalk, the cross court sidewalk, path of the racket, path of the target. But Raven Clausen coaching Lloyd Harris, and what a treat, where he's coaching his player, this fellow South African, playing against the #1 player in the world on the biggest tennis court in the world. Actually, the first time I ever met Jeff Lewis, he was playing mini tennis. I flew to Tampa to do a coach's workshop, what have you, and I do reprimand. I reprimand myself. People have to realize I'm very self-critical, but even with parents, hey mom, hey dad, hello. But Olderstedt, great guy, great player. he was with us for a long time. Lewis and DeHart were playing mini tennis with continental grips, and it was on clay. And I know you spent a lot of time in Spain. You just see kids play mini tennis the right way, and it looks like full court tennis the way they play.
Mm-hmm.
But somewhere in this text, I get around to the alley. So these are some notes written to Raven Clausen about the match with Lloyd Harris playing Alcaraz a couple of days ago. Your man needs to understand the Boris Becker plan. Boom, boom, and more boom. And I said, you know what to tell him. With Robbie Seguzo. Robbie Seguzo beat Jimmy Connors at Wimbledon. Bob Brett told Robbie, and Connors, like Alcaraz, was so great with movement. He said, never make him run. Just hit right to him. On service games, hopefully he can have the option to hit a third shot. But, then it comes down to, and Lloyd Harris, hats off to him and his family. I mean, he's been as high as 31 in the world. But you need to play the cards the right way to have the mind of a poker player. The last thing you try to do against a guy like that, Alcaraz, is spread the court from the back of the court.
Mm-hmm.
Where the angles beget the angles. Really, the only angle he should be looking for, in one of the sets, he lost his straight sets, but went to a tiebreaker, is closing on volleys. And Raven Clausen, for our listeners, he's been a guest on our podcast. I mean, 3 knee operations, saw he was out of tennis, and it came back, and Wimbledon finals, lost in 5 sets, Australian Open final. I don't know. I think he was 3 in the world. But here's the language. When the point's over, you should be able to take 1 step and touch the net, ideally. You can't hit east and west 180 degrees, but 130 degrees volume potential. And if he could just get in and, basically win more points at the net than he loses, take a page from Jimmy Connors, Djokovic today, and in between Andre Agassi, stay close on the return. Because Alcaraz really kicks that ball, especially in the ad court.
Oh, yeah.
Agassi quote, "I'm going to play on my terms." If he went into the match with the crystal ball going, I don't think I'm going to win this. I don't think Las Vegas is picking me to win. But certainly if you're that good a player, you're thinking, hey, Tommy Paul's an outstanding player, but it wasn't too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, Tommy Paul has got a win over Alcaraz. Well, if he can do it, I can do it. Play like there's a third alley. This is what I'm getting to, is like there's an alley right up the middle of the court. Now instead of, what do they call it in England, the trim lines?
Trim lines, yeah.
And so now you get three places for the train. One is right up the middle. So let's interrupt there. I can come back to this text, but let's talk about Johnson. Another UCLA player. What does Johnson lack? Let's ask Johnson. Should I tell his listeners why I call you by your last name?
Yeah. Just this once.
We'll get around to that story. But Spencer, what do you lack? What does Mackenzie McDonald, what's he always going to have that's better than what you have?
Movement.
Speed. Sorry. Did I hurt your feelings, Johnson?
No, it's okay.
Speed. Your mother's going to be mad at me. Let's have them have a race. Eugene Scott, the fastest tennis players in the world win a schoolyard race, but Mackenzie McDonald, he, through Matt Clore, he hung out with us for 3 weeks during the pandemic, and that guy has got some wheels. That guy is a Ferrari.
Yeah, that guy can. He did okay at UCLA, I think, Spencer. You might want to look him up.
I think Arthur Ashe, he won singles and doubles, and Mackenzie McDonald won singles and doubles. Plus, he got the sportsmanship award. And yeah, you're taller than him, Johnson.
The problem is, does Spencer Johnson even know who Arthur Ashe is? I just got back from New York, in the player waiting area where the practice court desk and transport is. is a couple of nice benches. You just kind of sit on and wait when the transport's coming. Huge picture of Arthur Ashe in street clothes sitting on a train on the subway in New York. Every time we sit there, I had obviously my player with me. I had a couple of players I coached at Advantage who were like working at the Open. Who's that in the picture? I don't know. Some guy reading the paper. I'm like, where are we standing? Arthur Ashe Stadium. Who's that guy? Arthur Ashe. Why is he reading the paper? Like, guys.
A friend of mine, Jim Martz, he actually just sold Florida Tennis, the magazine, but he's working on it. He's been working on it for a long time, but he's going to put out a book with just Arthur Ashe quotes.
Wow.
Yeah. My quote is, I play like Arthur Ashe's brother, Jack Ashe.
Richmond, Virginia, right? Not far from you.
Yeah. Can't swear around the Mormons, so I got to be careful. Let's go with Max Cressy, though. Let's talk about, what do you know about Max Cressy's game, Johnson?
Big serve volley.
Yeah, what do you think of that, Coach Secker? He's isn't it kind of sad?
I remember Mr. Cressy. Mr. Cressy was struggling his first few years, and they actually came down. We had a boy play at UCLA. We played 4, 5, 6 for them, and they were pretty good. They're in the final. Cressy wasn't making the lineup. Billy kept letting them go forward, and they were serve volleying doubles. He played with that other really tall boy, Peter Smith's nephew. I can't remember his first name. They serve volleyed their way to NCAA doubles, but Cressy really improved. Really, I mean, he's obviously a really good athlete coming in, but he was trying to play from the back of Keegan. You're right, Keegan
Smith.
from San Diego.
Smith.
Yeah,
got to go those Smiths. I mean, they started the LDS Church. Come on.
There's a lot of Smiths out there. Yeah.
Joseph. He's the man.
But Cressy, I don't think he made the lineup his first year at UCLA.
No.
If my memory serves me right, I don't think he did.
Oh, then to ask Mackenzie McDonald, but they do have a ball machine because he hit it by the hour, and people just it was forehand. But my question to Coach Secker, Johnson, is what are your thoughts when you think, well, he's the only guy on the planet, the only guy on the tour who serves and volleys? What do you think of that?
I mean, it's people are saying it's basically because he can't play off the baseline, right? But the reality is, it doesn't matter how you get to net. I mean, I agree. I mean, if you had a serve like that, you should have many opportunities to follow up with a volley. But again, if the guys can't serve like that, they can get in behind their other weapons, right? I mean, Alcaraz is getting to the net. He's not coming. He's got to be one of the leaders in net appearances as well, right? And people say, well, Djokovic is a grinder or he's so consistent, but he's getting to the net. They're just getting on their terms. But I mean, no. In singles, you can see why over a longer time it's kind of worn them down a little bit, the serve volleying, especially the bigger guys on their bodies. But in the doubles, it's unbelievable to me. Like the men's doubles not serve volleying, it's like blows my mind.
John Isner.
I can't understand guys that size. Their serves are bouncing so high.
Now, Andy was telling me that he was talking to Jason Jong, our listeners, a very good tennis player, played at Michigan, took a year off, came back. I know you've practiced with him, right? Mm-hmm. Spencer, he stopped by to say hello to one of our students that trains at the same places just like a year ago. And, he just said, well, Cressy has such a big serve. And I go, even if you don't have a big serve, I mean, once in a while, a little sneak attack. I mean, like once a year. I mean, come on. And the thing is
the great serve. I mean, I wouldn't say Edberg, Rafter, these guys had monster serves, and I think they even deliberately hit it slower so they could get in faster.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's where Edberg didn't have a very good record against Connors. I mean, not at all.
Yeah.
But both those guys they hit a lot of kicks. So when the ball was in flight, they could be in movement. So yeah, I would say they were more
good serves.
I mean, 2-second serves.
2
great second serves. 2 great second serves for our listeners that are pluses. With but
movement on them.
So should Johnson play more like Mackenzie McDonald or Max Cressy?
I think he needs to drop back. Just try and find the forehand. Just rip. We were talking earlier about Hank Lloyd. You were talking about Hank Lloyd. I'll tell you another good lefty. He can back me up on this story. Carsten Ball was about 50 in the world. A good friend of mine who now works at Costa Mesa Tennis Center. We were talking about that. We were asked to go and watch someone play in a few. There used to be a 15K at Costa Mesa Tennis Center. We were asked to go. I won't say who asked us to watch. There was a college person. Can you go watch this player play? Tommy Paul actually played in that tournament. I remember. There's a little mound by the back row of three courts at Costa Mesa. Carsten and I roll down there from RCI. It's a quick drive. We sit down to watch the match. They warm it up. We're looking around. The second point of the match, the kid we were watching on Costa Mesa's court was like playing on an ice rink. I mean, West Coast courts are fast, but Costa Mesa's might be the fastest. These are like lightning courts. This kid we go to watch play, he's probably 17. We sit down. The second point of the match, the kid backs up so far, the backswing of his forehand hits the back fence. Carsten looks at me and says, "Are you ready for lunch?" I said, "Yeah, let's go." So we just left. We watched 2 points. The kid hit the back fence, and we ran. And we were at the beach for lunch. It was like, oh, that's all we need to see about this guy. Yeah, but no. I think if you're a big boy and you're going to play on the West Coast courts, I think you might want to go towards the net, not the fence.
No, I've seen Carsten Ball play at that tournament in Knoxville. What a monster of a guy. How big is he?
He's 6'5". He should have played baseball or football, that guy. We used to go to the beach a lot. I mean, to see him throw a football, I mean, that guy's playing the wrong sport.
Like Taylor Dent, Carsten Ball, those guys. I was in Newport Beach, in that area back when those kids were, telling them first they were in strollers. But that was like little Australia with, Laver was there, Emerson was there.
Playing cricket a lot, playing football, American football a lot. I mean, the throwing motions on those guys. And big boys, like just big, strong guys. Like grew up in the water surfing, always on the beach working out and just throwing all day.
But going back to Carsten, though, he could have used a dose of Welby Van Horn balance. He could use a dose of Vic Braden information. I watched all those Aussies teach tennis back in the day. I was very fortunate to spend so much time with Emerson when he was teaching there. But I think of one time Ray Ruffles. I coached a young girl who she had all these records. She played at Berkeley. Last name Smith. She seriously, she. I remember sending Ray Ruffles this video I had of her because she was back and forth with us. Hardship kid, we're helping out and been with the USTA. And it comes back to history is that, what did, the coaches of the past do? But I remember Carsten Ball playing and, you kind of look around and go, could you imagine if he had refined skills? And that's the thing with like a Max Cressy. How long did it take him? That thing with Mackenzie McDonald, I don't know Rosie's last name, but she taught him really well. Overall, his technique. I know Matt Clure helped him tremendously, but overall, just a very, very good.
He's pretty clean.
Technical.
Yeah, he's pretty clean. Yeah.
And what a lot of parents don't understand is that, let's come back to the US Open for a minute, is that there's quite a few players there that they're there because they're physical specimens and they're just competitive animals. What are your thoughts on that?
I spend a lot. At these pro events, you're in the gym more than you're on the tennis court. Practice time is limited. The most court time you get is when you play, and you just live in the gym. I mean, they take the physical side very, very seriously. I mean, these are they are living through their bodies, but there are some absolute specimens walking around. I mean, I myself am a specimen, so I'm not very intimidated by these people. But I have to recognize genetically there's people with some advantages over me.
With a little humor, did you get that, Johnson?
Yeah, I got that one.
John's a little slow. I don't think you realize how funny that was. With coming back to this text message to Raven Clausen about Alcaraz versus Lloyd, if you had 10 practice sessions against a number one player of the world and you played with these tactics, then you'd feel more comfortable. In the end, Raven said, well, it's so tough because he hasn't played. Like we always say, you haven't lived your life to win. Obviously, the guy's 31 in the world, but this right here is another Agassi, engage weapon number one. It wasn't too long ago where Medvedev, and he should be so thankful to, he is very thankful, let me say it correctly, he is very thankful to Novak, because Novak practiced with him when he was playing futures and said, hey, you can do great. But it was just a couple summers ago, so it's on national TV, and Novak is just turning Medvedev's second serve into lunch. And Medvedev, really from that point forth, he just starts hitting two bombs. That's the old Rod Laver thought, if you can't get 1 out of 2 in, you don't deserve to win the point anyway. But, this is something I wrote. War comes down to air, sea, and ground. And this is telling Lloyd Harris to Raven, your man is the Air Force. He needs to just drop bombs, engage weapon number one. And just serve body, go forward. And, then just do the math at the net. I know you use that line with, not playing second serves. If the biggest word in the dictionary, put a crystal ball on it. It's like, okay, I've got to try to get the tiebreakers. What am I going to do? I get 3 chances to hold serve. And, so you can go back and, with that, you can look at the stats and, you could tell us about your players. Can you get them at least to do it in practice where, play outside of their comfort zone?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about second serve return, right? Second serve return. I mean, I obviously deal more with the women. It's probably the shortest ball, the weakest ball you're going to see in the rally. That's one of the easiest ones that you can attack. I think there's 3 that you can just say you have to hit a plus on these shots. First serve, you have to hit a plus. Second serve return, you should be hitting a plus. And when you get an approach, a short ball, you should be hitting a plus. And it's amazing under pressure. At the US Open, I've been lucky this year. Every Grand Slam I've been to, one of my alumni has been with me, sitting right next to me. And I love having the service clock and the service speed. It's amazing under pressure how much the service speed goes down. It's like the players averaging like 104, 105, and it gets like 30 or 4 all, and they'll roll in at 82 mile an hour first serve. It's like, why, in this opportunity, why would you try and hit a plus every single time? Second serves as well, you're having to constantly coax players to attack the second serve. And I think it's like what you say, come back to the instinct with the drop shot. I think the top players, they have the instinct to attack maybe under pressure a little bit more, whereas that next level down, they're a little bit afraid sometimes to go for it, right? And it could be bad experiences in the past, or someone like Alcaraz is like his only experience winning, so his instinct is just to keep going for it, right? But no, we constantly work on those 3 because those are the ones I think are your best opportunity to hit a forcing shot, right? It's amazing how much they dip under pressure, those 3 though.
Yeah, I'll come back to Ray Ruffles and sending that video. Is that he when I sent it to him, he was leaving the USTA to go. He was a national coach for them. He was becoming a national coach for Tennis Australia. And that's the kind of stuff that we have in our library. That's another whole topic. When you show a film to someone, what happens to the film? And, it went from VHS to, I go back when it was reel to reel, but VHS, beta, then it was CD or DVD. Now it's a private YouTube clip. What about initially with your freshmen? Have you already done the video work?
Yeah, so 3 of them, the American-based players, came in the summer, which is really nice to have them in for summer school because they can take 1 class. We can work a lot slow. It's all voluntary stuff in the summer, so there's no hour restrictions. You can do like slow work in the mornings, like lower intensity stuff, and then they kind of do like a team type thing, practice style stuff in the afternoons with the older players. But we film and just go through it, and we've actually got to the point now. It's nice. At the end of the day, we see the same thing year after year. It's just identical. I actually was doing it this summer, and I just had one of my seniors do it. I was obviously in the room, but I just had one of my seniors to say, I said, you can do this. You've heard this enough times now. Tell her what's going on with these things. and just have a senior just run through it. Okay, look, on your backhand volley, your elbow's bent, the racket's pointing to the sky, and the ball's about 9 millimeters from contact. So you're probably going to have to get your left elbow up a little bit. And the grip is a little bit off and things like that. But no, we film them straight away. It's just the easiest way to start the conversation. Obviously, our primary concern is where's it going to hurt, because I do worry about that with the younger ones when they've been playing a lot of tennis and they come in. We put them in under a lot of pressure straight away. Is what's going to get injured. So that's kind of the first issue, and then obviously we want them to hit the ball cleaner and cleaner over the years. But we film them straight away. We're lucky. We have really good technology, so we film practice sets towards the end of kind of the second week they've been in, and then we teach them how to chart off of that. So once they get the idea of charting, and then usually when they go to their tournaments at the end of the summer, they're able to get filmed now, so they start charting a lot, and they get the idea for it. And you really just hope that it just creates conversations, right? Okay, I see on film where the forehand doesn't get below the ball. And then I see in my matches where I thought my forehand was my biggest shot, but I'm actually missing a lot more forehands and backhands. And it's just these things to start conversations. Obviously, we've already got, Simon and I already have a plan of what we're going to do with them. But it is better if it can kind of be led by them, at least the conversations. If we do it right, they come to us and say, I see what I need to work on. And then obviously we've got to give them some structure for it. But yeah, no, that's day one with the freshmen.
I think that for the parents who listen, the one luxury, you could comment on this, the one luxury that a college coach has is the bench and the brain. Like who's going to play, who's going to be in the lineup. It's amazing with in the private sector, junior tennis players. Well, yeah, I saw the video, but I'm not doing that. And on the pro circuit, the player's in charge of the coach. So that's backwards.
Yep. Yeah. And it's tough because, we just had an experience with at the US Open where it's like, if I could just call timeout or something, just be able to just save her from a tailspin or just some situation. In college, you can pull them back, or in team situation, because we can coach them the way we can really kind of stop momentum and stop some of these things from happening. But in tennis, I mean, they are the boss. It's a conversation we've had a lot with Diana this summer. You're in charge. You need to understand, like, you are a business and you are in charge. You've got to make these decisions. Like, we will help, we will guide, we will do whatever you need. But this is, in tennis, you are in charge. That's why some people do well in college, because the pressure's off them. It's on the coach if they do it right. If they're just following the instructions, there's really no pressure on the player. Just effort, right? But the coach can take the blame for screwing it up.
Yeah, Gloria Connors, it's a business. By the time Jimmy was 5, he could hit the ball. You could be 6 years old and have great technique. The sad thing is the consumer, they just don't have consumer knowledge, and they're blindly writing checks, and kids go so many years with poor technique. Let's do this. 2 young players, Johnson, that you've played before, have wins over. Tell us about those 2 players. They're in the U.S. Open, right? Or they were in the U.S. Open.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us, go one by one.
And
And then tell us why you think they're in the U.S. Open.
Well,
For names.
one player, his name's Alex Mickelson. He's a respected player. I think he's around 120 in the world now.
And you beat the boy. You beat him before you went to the Juvie Center. You had a win over him 2 years ago. It's good.
Yeah, him and I we're 1-on-1.
Oh, you played him again?
And I lost the first time in 3, and then I beat him the second time.
3-0?
Something like that.
Johnson. Write that on the bathroom wall, Johnson.
He
why is he 120 in the world?
Why is he in 120 in the world? Well, he moves really well. I think
Big boy. How old is he?
He's like 19 now.
19 and 6.
6'4". He's got a pretty good serve.
Pretty good means pretty bad. I mean, it's good.
It's solid.
Okay.
It's solid.
You know these guys, David, or this guy?
Yeah, it's the kid who was supposed to go to Georgia. I think he was with Walpole when he was young.
I'll have to find that out.
I'll put that one out there. Yeah.
Another English coach. He's a good English coach, though. There's a difference. I got that in. Do you like that?
That's a good one.
With no, I'll have to ask Mark about that. I'd love to find out about the history of player, the backstory. But why do you, again, didn't you say earlier it's such a manageable game?
It's not a real win, though. It's not a real win, Spencer, because I heard that guy is actually left-handed and he plays right-handed.
Oh,
so he played you. He played you with the wrong hand.
Right.
So it's cheating.
Okay.
He'd smoke you if he was left.
Plus, he was on a practice court, and Johnson got a 40-love lead.
Yeah, he super manageable. I think I saw some tape of him when I was so interested because I got back from my mission and I had been away from the tennis world for 2 years, and then I heard he's turned pro. I was like, well, what happened? And he just looked super calm on the baseline, just cool as a cucumber, and he was just keeping a lot of balls in play, super solid. He just like if I could describe him in a few words, it would just be that he plays manageable tennis. It's just he's not trying to do too much.
Yeah, I think play within yourself, play shots you own. Biggest mistake, people try to hit the ball hard. We thought, and what was the name of the other player?
Ethan Quinn.
You know him, Dave?
It's another Georgia boy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This the guy who won NCAA singles.
Yeah, and he's turned pro.
Yeah, he's a Cali boy, isn't he? He's Fresno?
Something like that.
Something like that. Johnson, you got to win over him too, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Was that in the 10s?
No, yeah, that was the 8s.
When did you play him? 18s?
Yeah, I played him my senior year.
So same thing. Where's he ranked, or I mean, how's he? Why do you think he became an NCAA champion?
He's got a big forehand. He's kind of a player who doesn't seem too affected by the score, where he'll just keep trying to play aggressive tennis. He's like an aggressive baseliner, just nonstop. Like he's not really too affected by the score. He'll keep going for it. He's got a pretty aggressive game.
Well, that's a really good tip. Not regulated by the scoreboard. Let me say run a few more things by you on this text to Raven Clausen. If you could serve first, this is Lloyd Harris, Pancho Gonzalez. When you just know, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to serve first. It's always nice to hold serve, be up 1-0.
Mm-hmm.
But Gonzalez, who had a hammer grip, all his fingers bunched together. And there's a lot of people like Arthur Ashe, Jimmy Connors, both have said this in the past, that if there was a line you don't hear so much anymore, but if I had to pick someone to play for my life, Gonzalez, his name was picked along with McEnroe, interesting, those two, by both Ashe and Connors. But when you hold serve and you just know you can hold serve, you can be super aggressive on the return.
Mm-hmm.
And I put in the notes also is that when the point was over, I was telling this player the other day, you're playing the 18s, like 2 days ago, you're a visitor up here, you're playing 18s, playing indoors, hard court, it's your serve, and the other person's at the net. That's not good. So I think for Lloyd Harris, if the point ended and if the point ended and he loses the point, but he's in the forecourt, that was a win. If he could just get to the forecourt with some intelligence. And then also too is that when he's playing Alcaraz, if it's on a hard court, and boy's a big boy with a big serve. If the point's over, even if he wins it and he's at the baseline, consider it a loss. Tiriac said to Becker one time, and Becker went out and did the opposite to prove him wrong. He said that you only let the ball bounce once on the return, and then when the ball boy gives it to you. Because the late Barry McKay used to say, "Yeah, I'm going to play, and I'm going to pull the baseline with me. I'm not. I mean, there's going to be no baseline in this match." Let's go back to Jeff Lewis for a minute, and we'll talk more about this thing. We tell people. Vic Brain's line, our players will loosen up after they win nationals. But you got that, Spencer?
Yeah.
Let me just phone.
Second
video. Johnson, pressure's on here.
Here we go.
Turn UCLA down and come and be on our podcast. A regular. We can make it a techie. You can do the commercial promos, even though we don't have any yet. Go ahead.
How to improve your forehand. Here we go.
Part 2.
If you are liking the videos, hit that like button. Helps out me and the YouTube algorithm. Also subscribe to the channel so we can make sure we keep getting you more great information. The second tennis myth or misconception is even more understandable than the first. It's just such a minute period of time to be able to see it. And again, when you watch pros, all we can do is guess as to what actually happens till high-speed photography. But basically, people think the ball is in contact with the strings much longer than it actually is. There's ideas perpetuated that you can come under and then roll over the ball during contact. You can't do that to have an effective topspin forehand. Some people think that you can come up to contact and then accelerate at contact, and then you're somehow going to get more topspin. Also not possible. The reality is the ball is only in contact with your strings roughly 4 to 6 1/1000ths of a second. That just isn't enough time to do anything. Now, the ball can move a little bit on your racket, but the angle of the racket face simply doesn't change during contact. And the problem with trying to do so is that you're recruiting smaller muscles, which end up slowing down the kinetic energy that's already been put into the swing. And it also hurts your hitting zone. Obviously, if you're trying to time a flip into the hit, you're going to have a much smaller area to make a good contact in. Now, this should be a very freeing concept, knowing that there's nothing you can do at contact. I can even let go of my racket right before it hits the ball and still make a nice, decent topspin shot. Now, you got to be careful with progressions. You don't want to start your racket in the low and closed position. You always want to take your racket back high and then let it drop below the ball and hood it slightly to the ground. But for this drill, just start right there, because this is the position a lot of people aren't getting into. Now, knowing what you know, having your racket in this position allows you to simply lift your shoulder, and it's going to position the racket face correct at contact. So start with your racket here, drop a ball, and just lift your shoulder, and don't try to do anything during contact. Just trust that those strings are going to be in the right position and make a nice topspin shot. So hopefully by identifying those two myths or misconceptions.
For those who don't know what the position he was talking about, he had his racket in the slot, we would say.
In the slot, like dribbling the basketball. Pet the Chihuahua. A lot of people are petting the Great Dane. They're not getting that racket hit too low. Don't you think, coming back to what I mentioned, this young Henry Park, conversations begin and end with a forehand?
It's so boring. It's so boring, the forehand. Like the serve is interesting. It's an interesting shot. Like there's a lot of parts to it. It's an unnatural thing. It doesn't make sense. But the forehand is so boring. Everybody wants to talk about the forehand. It's like, guys, it's just about like the backhand volley or something. Like this is just, it just gets old to the forehand.
Let me ask you a question about Novak. So the other day he's down 2-0, comes back and wins. You think he was worried? You think he was concerned? It reminds me of Bjorn Borg.
I think the other guy was worried.
The other guy was worried.
Oh God, I might beat Novak.
Well, there is that conversation where people get close and they're Billie Jean King. They're afraid to lose. They're afraid to win. Yeah. But Bjorn Borg was down 2-0 to Johan Creek. I used to say there's only one person in the stadium that wasn't concerned, and maybe he was concerned a little bit, but he came back and won 6-1, 6-1, 6-1.
Jeez.
He was alert, but I don't think he was concerned.
Yeah, it's like he had a little coffee. I mean, he was, which he probably doesn't have at all. Yeah. With barnstorming, I think we're all from that Cincinnati match a couple weeks ago. Really, I mean, 100% of people are probably just wishing to have an Alcaraz-Novak final.
Are you talking about the Cincinnati final, Alcaraz and Djokovic?
Yeah.
Okay, I landed. I'll tell you. Here's a story for you. I landed in New York that Sunday morning. Diana and I went to practice, checked into the hotel. That was on the Sunday. We got on transport at 8 a.m. The next morning. I was walking out to get a coffee at 7:45. Alcaraz was jogging down Lexington Avenue. And I thought, no, there's something wrong here. And then when I came out of the coffee shop, he was jogging back the other way. That was like less than 18 hours after the final.
Wow.
He was just jogging down before 8 o'clock in the morning, just going for a jog in the middle of New York. I thought I'd seen the wrong guy at first. And then I saw him the second time. I was like, that guy, I swear that guy just played Djokovic.
What a match. But the reminds me of the barnstorming days where you could wish and say, well, maybe they should just cancel the U.S. Open and have those guys play like they did years ago before tennis in '68 turned professional. And you know,
Yeah,
have
I mean,
Kramer
that's what other
versus
sports
Budge,
do,
or
right?
Kramer versus Gonzalez. And just say,
That's what other sports do, right? I
yeah.
mean, rivalries make sports. I mean, the more you see the rivalry, the more interesting it is, right?
But yeah, could you imagine if they just seriously? I mean, years ago, you know, Kramer, Gonzalez, they played 100 nights, you know, throughout a course of a year, and you know they're in Toledo, they're in Detroit, they're in Milwaukee, they got a big truck and a bus, and they're taking
You remember? I mean, I
taking the
don't
tennis
think
court with them.
I don't think Nadal and Federer ever played in New York, did they?
No, I
I
don't
think they
so.
played everywhere else. But I mean, how big of a deal was it when they played with the other three? I mean, you remember that match with Agassi Sampras where they played the 4 tiebreakers in New York?
Yeah,
That was like heavyweight boxing. With everybody's going to watch that, right?
right. I can remember, it was just like, well, Pete was struggling on that backhand side. Agassi could hit the 2 effective serves, but he didn't chip one return. But you know, he knew he was going to hold, and I keep trying. I'm just going to hit my backhand, hit my back. He wasn't going to float anything. But that was spectacular tennis, and people can go to YouTube and watch that. What a lesson! You know, it was a batter. It was a batter versus the pitcher.
Yeah.
And as great as Agassi's returns were, Sampras was going to get positioning. He's going to be at the net. Hey, let's go up to a question with Johnson. Johnson's going to be a freshman. What about challenge matches? You know, years ago, most coaches in college, I'm going 70s, 80s, long time ago, on a Tuesday, Wednesday, they'd have a tournament. They'd have 4 players. Say they had 12 players on their team or even more. But they would take the team, break it into foursomes, and you're either going to finish first or fourth. You win 2 matches and you move up a group, or if you're on the top court, you hold your position. But if you finish fourth, you lose 2 matches. You lose on Tuesday afternoon, you lose on Wednesday afternoon, kind of like the wrestlers. They used to have a wrestle off and take the politics out of it, and that's how you form your lineup. What are your thoughts on forming the lineup? I think that one thing about Johnson being in LA, there's, you know, the times I've been at the UCLA campus, there's lots of people there that aren't even on the team that are touring pros, and a lot of people to play. But what are your thoughts on the challenge system for colleges, forming the lineup?
I mean, when I played in college, we played a lot of challenge matches. I wouldn't say it formed the lineup, but it was. Simon used to always tell us, like, you can't really help yourself with this, but you could definitely hurt yourself. You have a good performance, great. If you have a bad performance, that's going to hurt you. It was more like a credit system. I certainly played those. Those are some of the most competitive matches we played in college. But we've talked about this before. With Armstrong, especially with the women, NC State, we don't play many matches in practice. We play a lot of tennis matches. We play by far the most matches of any college team through a year. You know, we had 3 players play over 90 singles matches last year. So we play a lot against opposition, but we don't play challenge matches to form a lineup or anything like that. But certainly that's not the norm. I think it's still a big part of college tennis, and I certainly remember when I played in college, those are some of the more memorable ones, obviously, because it's not like when you play opposition where it's, you know, done. You know, that goes back to the dorm room, that stuff, because you have a good challenge match or a feisty one. It carries over a little bit into the cafeteria or the dorm room or the next practice or the weight room. Certainly, Armstrong, we had some fun moments with that stuff. Yeah. It's a good part of college tennis.
Yeah, I think that, you know, even if a player is not given the challenge matches, there's not a system. You just got to get up every day, and every day's a tournament day, even though it's not a tournament day.
There is a system. I mean, we play a ton of matches in fall. You'll see who's doing what in what flight. There is a system. It's just we're competing more against the outside than the inside. But we play so much now. Plus, we've been playing through the summer. I mean, it's not that difficult to figure out where the lineup kind of falls. You know?
Yeah. Well, one of my older brothers, this is back before the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team won gold. my brother, I mean, he obviously is a very good hockey player, but the Americans were really not given a fair shake. College hockey was like 99% Canadian players. And also back then, the Canadian kids, all provinces went to grade 13. But I tell parents all the time, yeah, my brother, he sat in the press box, coat and tie, press box. And there's a couple guys that are not dressing. But when parents come to visit, they come to visit their child, and there's a tennis match they're going to attend. The player sits in the bleachers next to their parents. I'm just trying to plant that seed. I go, that's why you need to work and work and work. Would you want your parents to come on college weekend and you're not in the lineup? But on the other hand, one of the best things is for a kid actually to ride the pines, get some splinters in their fanny. Johnson, that's not swearing. They get, they ride the pines, and that's where they're going to get motivated. I mean, they can either, the boys, they can go to the bar and have a beer and cry over spilt milk, or they can just kick their heels in. But actually, tennis should be a sport that's not as political. When it comes down to a team sport and who's going to decide, who the two guards on a basketball team are, I mean, that's more the coach's opinion. But I think tennis should be more of a head-to-head practice. And, I think Ty Tucker, well, if they played 10 times, what's the breakdown? And then, Jim Verdick, we talk about all the time, keep records of it. Do you do that? Do you keep records of practice sets?
No, we film them. I mean, I'm just, in practice, we're really not that worried. We're more just trying to figure out the player. We're more just worried about getting the information of what the player, where it's breaking down, what the issues are, and what the decision making is. But no, we don't really play many practice sets, and we don't really play many practice matches. We feel like that's what the tournament play is for. As long as we're playing a rugged enough schedule and we're getting enough matches, practice is the time to go back and work on it. I mean, the counter to that is, I've seen this a lot, Steve, over the years, is I feel like sometimes coaches run out of ideas in practice and just roll out the balls and let's play some points.
Yeah.
It's because I see a lot of coaches just get super comfortable in the chair watching practice points. It's amazing to me how many people watch points and they don't write down one thing. People make fun of me for charting or this, that, the other, but if we're going to play points, we've got to get some information out of it, right?
With practice matches, I do think there's a nerve factor with if you're playing a match and
a real challenge match is good. Yeah, a real one. Really
whoever wins this plays 6. Whoever loses doesn't play.
Those are good ones. Yeah.
Christina Dell was here, daughter of Donald Dell, tennis legend, agent. I mean, everything. Player, coach, captain of the Davis Cup team, and you're talking about people not knowing Arthur Ashe. Her twin sister's godfather is Arthur Ashe, and her godfather is Stan Smith. And she just grew up watching all these world-class tennis players. And she's telling me that polite Yannick Noah was asking if he could sing at her wedding. But the father was not only the agent of Yannick Noah. What a fantastic player. That's one thing, too. Like, oh, that's a Braden serve. No, that's his serve. That's just an efficient serve, law of physics. Vic didn't teach him, but that's just how it works. It's kind of like Richard Krajicek. But anyway, Joaquim, the son of Yannick, he's at the bench at the University of Florida. Then they won 2 NCAA titles. Then he gets to the Chicago Bulls and he sits the bench. Then he became the NBA Player of the Year. So yeah, people can ride the pines, but just curious about that. What you thought about that?
No, our player played 2 for us this year. 1 doubles, Alana Smith. I mean, she's taken behind Diana the most WTA points of any college player this year in 2023. Those 2 ranked 1 and 2 in college tennis. Alana broke her ankle the year before, had ankle surgery. She sat on the bench the whole year. She was getting hand-fed by me out of a chair. She basically was just sitting there watching the matches, and obviously she knows how to chart and do these things, but she had her best year this year as a college player. She has her best WTA ranking as well. She literally sat with a boot on, not able to walk for 6 months, and improved her tennis. as long as you're being productive with it, you can improve your tennis.
Let's talk doubles for a minute with Johnson. If you can make one volley deep in singles, make one volley deep in singles doubles, that you got such a great chance to win the point. Before we came on air, a player went to NC State, was trained by Dave Anderson. I remember meeting him when he was really young, being out there many times. Club we talk about quite often, Brookhaven. Ian Dempster, based on circumstances, personal circumstances, he played at NC State. Then he wasn't playing, but he stayed there, graduated. Tony Bresky brings him in at Wake Forest, and he becomes an NCAA champion. He was in the lineup playing doubles. You're out, you're at ITF tournaments, perhaps recruiting, or the Grand Slams, the Nationals. How often do you see a young tennis player that you could be considered as a recruit for your team? And listeners, again, they were their team. They were in the finals last year of Nationals. How many kids do you see who can play doubles? Serve, volley, go forward. What percentage?
You can on one hand. I mean, obviously, there's a few who have relations to you, right, who are doing it and having success, but it's painful. I mean, it's almost unwatchable. It's painful. One of my favorite games with Simon, I play this one, is like, how many players can we spot in a day playing doubles who have one foot in the alley when they're the non-server? Like, what are you covering? Like, who told you to stand there? It's tough. It's really tough, but it's not necessarily the player's fault. It's just no one's just shown them some basic stuff, right? It's tough to watch, and it's easy to laugh at sometimes, but it's also painful because nobody's helping them with it, right? And there's some players who certainly have some things that they could do, but they just need someone to kind of just get them to stand in the right spot.
My son Connor had a great line, a little humility. He had results in doubles, and people would compliment him about, oh, you're a really good doubles player. And he would, great line. He said, well, not really. I just know where to stand. And I said, well, you could add to that. I know where to stand. I know how to hang onto the racket. Where, yeah.
We do that. We put the ropes up, right? We just get the ropes. If you serve, let's say, to the inside, the tee or the body, let's say the returner hits it from here. Here's where the ball could possibly go. Where should you stand? And they all just say, well, I'm going to stand in the middle of the two ropes, right? That would make a lot of sense to me. That's the angle. So your partner can get the ball if it goes in the alley. How about you just stand here? Oh, that makes sense. It's that simple, right? Like, it's that simple of an idea where you just stand here and you get better at doubles. It's tough because no one's working on it. They have no chance, and then they're finding out about doubles late in life, right? And it also robs from their singles, because obviously if they would play doubles kind of the right way when they're younger, or a more efficient way, it would help their singles play. Because again, they can work on some things that they just don't get to work on as often in singles, right? It's tough to watch the doubles, yeah. It's very, very tough to watch.
With Spencer, with doubles, deuce court, ad court, what do you like better?
Deuce court.
And why?
So my forehand's in the middle.
Can you name a little tennis history, Dave? Let's test the young man. Can you name any doubles teams, championship teams, legendary teams that were lefty-righty?
The Bryan brothers.
There's one. We're feeding him right now too, Coach Secker. So if he doesn't give us at least 3, no food tomorrow.
You can phone a friend if you need to as well. And don't say Jimmy and Joey Johnson, because they didn't win anything.
That's the only team I got. I can't.
I mean, pretty much all the top teams.
Radzulovic, Shriver, Roach, Newcomb. Yeah, come on. What comes to your mind?
McEnroe,
I'm empty.
McEnroe, Fleming, Woody and Woody.
Woody and Woody. Yeah, so we're gonna have a feast tomorrow, you and me, Johnson. Maybe we'll give him a bagel for breakfast. Let's go back to why we call you Johnson.
Okay.
Okay, so we have this. I have a little video. It's a fun story. So I'm at Panera, great place to take homeschoolers. Great place because they have great Wi-Fi. And I don't want to mention any names. Arush Ganji. He buys this cinnamon twist cookie. I'm not sure what they call it, bagel donut. So I said, all you knuckleheads get over here. New rule. Don't buy that bagel. Don't buy that cinnamon twist donut. And meanwhile, as I'm going through this, I'm just, as Andy Fitzell would say, all they can hear is from Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. They don't hear one thing I say. So I get done. This is like really a 2-minute meeting. I said, all right, back to work. Johnson goes straight to the counter, buys the same bagel. So I pledged at that time never to call him Spencer again. I said, Johnson.
It was a good bagel.
Speaking of Fitzel, have you heard about his lifestyle change with nutrition?
Yeah. I hear he's not a vegan anymore.
Diana was staying in my house before we went to New York, and she's watching a movie with my son. It's one of the Disney movies where the animals get trapped in Madagascar. And one part of the movie, there's all these steaks. And Diana's like, oh, that's funny. I'm going to send that to Andy. You should have seen the steak he had the other night. I said, excuse me? She said, what? I said, Andy doesn't eat steak. He's like a hardcore vegan, and he just makes fun of me for being fat the whole time. And she said, Dave, I had dinner with him a week ago. He had a steak. Oh my God. I can talk to Fitzel. Fitzel's a carnivore again. He's just eating things now.
Andy Fitzell, a funny guy. Actually, here's something on a text that Kimberly Burrell, you've had many practice sessions with her, right?
Yeah.
So,
great guy. Yeah. Wonderful guy.
So I think she's up to like 105. The magic number is 104 to get into the majors, right? I'm trying to not say grand slam, because a grand slam is winning all 4. A major is a major.
Yep.
But so she gets in as a lucky loser from qualies, and she plays second round, right? Jennifer Brady, or is it first round? Second round, wasn't it?
I think it was first round.
Was it
I think it was first round, but I think it was on Tuesday because she was in qualies, right? It's played Brady.
Yeah, so obviously there's lots of people we know. I know Raven told her it's that's a green light game. You're in the lead, you got to attack. You're up 5-3 in the second set. One thing on her serve, and what her father is good friends with Dave Squire, who you know, and know his son, and so they've used the curriculum, the educational pathway that we put together for years and years since she was a kid. But this is just a guess for her on the serve. Andy's working with her. It's always good to have some time away from tournaments. But so many kids, they, even when they're well taught, they still go palm up. You tell a little kid continental grip, and they refinger the grip, and they put the racket in the palm up position, and pizza position pull down. So then they don't, how they change, not necessarily in her case, but it's an educated guess for most players. What they do is they arch their back, toss over their head, because they've heard hit a kick serve, let the edge go up, and they can start hitting some spin, but there's no future. There's not spin in speed. But I think one of the best things, I think a good drill for her, she's got to get to that horizontal plane where she's like, go out and throw rackets. Braden used to recommend take a string, tie it to the racket, and at the end of the string, just buy like a baby shoe, an infant shoe. And then when you swing properly, you can just see the shoe fly, that horizontal plane that you can't see with the human eye. But it's so many players, they don't really let the racket go forward. I know Jeff Lewis would be somebody who'd be a stickler on that. Is we do this drill where you catch it like a baseball player, catch it if you're righty, catch it in your left hand, and just actually turn the Elvis Presley from the ground up, the Elvis pelvis with a guitar. Elvis Presley stepped down, and the players out in front just try to snap down on it so that you're getting that toss like Johnson out to the left. Again, coming back to Johnson's serve, Johnson's doubles in general. So anyway, I have these notes where, Andy read the notes to the player. I do think it's important to count the number of volleys you hit, count the number of overheads you hit. Junior tennis, it's a crisis. Mom and dad, it's a crisis. You can go to a tournament, your kid is not hitting overheads. You go to a tournament And you know you're recruiting kids, and it's like, okay, yeah, this girl's got the right character, the right fight. She's got good nerves, and she's put herself where she's a highly acclaimed junior, but again, just not playing tennis from the service line in.
I said this to a freshman the other day. For example, tactics and technique. I think people have them backwards. Like people's tactics develop because of the holes in their technique, right? Like you talk about Alcaraz with options. He's got very clean technique. He's got a lot of options, so you can play tactically in ways. Most people's tactics just because of what they have in technique. And the one we see all the time right now is most players are coming in. They're on a composite on the forehand volley, even a little bit on the Eastern, some of them now, and they're the racket's pretty flat. They're pretty comfortable on that side, but they're not obviously they're not switching onto a continental on the backhand, so the angles are wrong. But it's amazing what I said to a freshman the other day. You just hit 28 volleys in the warm up. How many backhand volleys did you just hit? Because the ball's coming straight at you. So the odds are it should be a backhand volley. If you have a one-hander, if the person on the baseline is just kind of hitting the ball at you nicely, the math should be that you actually hit more backhand volleys than forehand volleys. She hit 28 volleys. She hit 24 forehand volleys. Say
that again, please.
She warmed up. So we did the warm-up. And she doesn't know I'm counting, but I'm standing behind her. 28 volleys in the warm-up. Just like the first 5 minutes. Up the middle, little rhythm. Come, you take some volleys overheads. I'll take some. Then we'll get going. She hit 28 volleys, 24 forehands. And we see this all the time. So I'll just count randomly one player a day. Okay, you just hit 19 volleys. 17 of them were forehands. The math doesn't add up on that. Like if the ball's coming straight down the middle, but so what they're doing is when they have these tactical or these technical issues, they just develop these coping mechanisms to work around it, right? But obviously the match, they can't hide it. So I think it's so important to chart and have the information. We just say to them, look, just be aware. Like you've hit enough forehand volleys, you've hit enough of these. You need to go after the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
Charting is key for the conversations.
With Jennifer Brady, obviously so athletic. I mean, she had the run where she got out to the semis, right? There's a lot of problems with injuries. She went. There's a lot said.
What school did she play at? Steve?
She played at UCLA. Teammates with Robin Anderson, someone who we spent a lot of time with. But Brady, I'm sure that Johnson, some of those gals would be on campus, and I'd love to see this happen. Now, at UCLA, the big guys with the big serves, but especially these lesser schools, never happens. I want to come back to Brady's forehand, but the macho male ego gets in the way. I mean, I'm on a college campus, and even sometimes coaches that this thing's got a very, very, very difficult job where you're in charge of two teams. I know you and Simon have done that before, right?
I'm good both.
But who wins? The number 12 guy plays the number 1 gal. Who wins that match? That match to me usually never happens. The guys are too dumb to play with the gals.
Yeah, at our level, 12 guy wins. But down the line for sure. I mean, there's a lot of schools in America, but down the line, that's a challenging matchup.
Yeah, but you take like a D3 program, for example.
For sure, there could be some competitive. With UTI, you could look at it. Yeah, I mean, for sure, there's some that's close. Yeah.
Yeah, but Brady's forehand, extreme grip, and the human brain, you can hit the ball any way you want. You make the calculations, you just put all the reps in. Quantity, initially, quantity wins. What you want is quantity with quality. In other words, Jimmy Everett, the person who hits the most balls. But coming back to Kimberly Burrell, you really only know how good that stroke is when you apply pressure. If you don't force against it, it's like, well, yeah, people can rally with inefficient technique, but if you pressure them to move, you pressure them taking time and space away from them.
No, I sat on the plane back from New York next to the UNC assistant Ty. Obviously, schools have a rivalry, but we're all around each other. Talking about Crawley, is the prototypical college player. College tennis is pretty simple tactically, right? Hit it to the forehand, hit it to the backhand, hit it high or hit it low, and it's some combination of those four things, right? That's college coaching. In case Johnson doesn't like high backhand, give him high backhands till he gives up. That's a lot of college coaching, right? Well, Crawley, she finds a weakness in these players, and mentally she can do it for 6 hours. Physically, she can go for 6 hours. So she's out there at the Open, and she played 2 players that had big holes on the forehand in the first 2 rounds. And she's just going to hit every single ball of a reasonable quality there until they either miss or give her something she can attack. And it's the same thing, like obviously she matched up against Kim. She figured that match out as it went along, and then just goes at it. Like just keeps going at it relentlessly. And that's, there's certainly a lot to that. But a lot of the times it's very interesting that players can't recognize a weakness. And either because they haven't watched film and studied, or because they have this preconception of what a weakness and a strength is. And a lot of times it's way off. Way off.
No, with Spencer here, the other day we were watching some club players. I said, watch this lady's forehand. Watch. And, in training tennis teachers, take a look. Just, can you watch somebody hit one ball and say, okay, tell me about their forehand? And then, you just improve over time with your analytical eye. I was at the
I learned a trick this summer. I've watched a lot of sets this summer of opponents scouting. We don't really scout at NC State, but for players, I mean, if you're playing in a Grand Slam, I'll scout matches for you. On YouTube, you can watch a set, right, or a match. There's a filter on there where you can play at half speed or quarter speed. So I'll chart a match. I'll chart 25 points from 4 different sets of a player one of our players is playing. That's great information, some tendencies. But actually, what I figured out way better, I would rather watch 10 points at half speed. Because once I can see the swing, the grip, the body, you got all the tactics right there. That's actually an easier way for me. Charting's good. But obviously they're playing different opponents, different surfaces sometimes. But once you see them in slow motion, it's really easy to see where some of the holes are going to develop, right?
Well, yeah, I have this thing with 10 points, just 10. We've gone down from 20. We're always lowering our standard. Get a clipboard. We have these charting sheets off of Bill Jacobson's CT 120. I created a simple T chart. And, the whole language is from Jacobson, plus, minus. People listen to our podcast. So I always tell kids, okay, if I was walk through the house, do your parents have Tennis Channel? Okay, is there a clipboard with these charting sheets? And they don't chart. Even tell the parents, like, get your own pole, and you can use a GoPro, a telephone, an iPad. They still don't do that. Being up here in the mountains, certainly some parents, I said, well, you don't really need to be in a year-round program. You don't need to have, someone holding your hand 365 days a year. But yeah, you chart to get the objective data, and people just don't do it. I was at the NCAA, so when Keegan Smith and Max Tressi won, how close, you obviously you're coaching women's tennis. I mean, you're on a campus where there's men's teams comes in, but I would think a lot of times your team is away when when the men's team is hosting matches. Yeah. It seemed that year, that was just a few years back, very few, less and less. I mean, I think it's 1 out of 3 men's teams serve and volley. 2 out of 3 are 1 up, 1 back. What do you think?
I think that's about right, for sure. Well, it's something like that because when you notice people who do serve volley, then that means that the majority aren't, right?
Yeah. Well, that's where the coaches want to win now. It's like, hey, you're going to be here for 4 years. I've had a lot to do with junior college tennis. I've heard many coaches say, well, we can't do it at this level. We only have it for 2 years. And but I think Johnson needs to play both sides because there could be an injury and you have to be able to step in. You can't just play the one side.
Well, if you want to play beyond college, if you can play both sides, you're a more attractive partner. I tell players all the time. If you play with someone you don't know, ask them what side they play. If they say deuce, you say, great, I'm an ad. Let's go. Like, just tell them what they want to hear so we can get in that doubles tournament. doubles is hard to get into at the pro level. So you just want to be the flexible partner who can play both.
No, you got to really be a lifer. Hang in there. Kudos to Austin Krajicek. He reached the #1 ranking because Federer's always said it didn't like the way the points were distributed. If you get to the quarters, you've had a great tournament, but they double the points, they double the money basically. And
kudos to Austin Krajicek as well, because when people start arguing with me about switching grips on the volley and they say, "Well, Dave, the top doubles guys don't do that," I say, "Well, who is the top doubles guy?" Got you there, buddy. Krajicek.
One thing about the Bryan brothers, and they're so great for tennis. That's where it'd be fun to dig through the Vic Braden library. I know the Tennis Channel owns that because they worked with Braden, and the pros, they don't say what they do or do what they say, and they go, "Yeah, we volley continental." It's like, well, let's take a look at that, and then you find out that they do make changes in their game. Let's turn this back to Johnson, Coach Secker. Do you think this young redhead can name any great redheads in the history of the game? Johnson?
Other than Simon Earnshaw?
What's that?
Other than Simon Earnshaw? The great redheads other than Simon Earnshaw?
Oh, I didn't know he's got red hair. I thought it was a red scalp. I got a red scalp.
Family redhead.
With can you
redheads?
Name some redheads, Johnson.
Jim Courier.
Jim Courier. Yes.
Good one.
#1 player in the world. Great Jim Courier stories. I know his sister.
Boris Becker.
Boris Becker. I play tennis like Doris Decker. Come on, we got 2. Don Budge.
Don Budge.
The book Championship Teacher. Never supposed to give a kid a hint. Never give him a hint.
What about Mark Woodford? Was he a redhead?
Yeah. Maureen Conley. You're missing one, though. You're missing maybe the most famous redhead of all. Lefty like you. A little faster than you.
The Rocket?
From Rockhampton, Australia. Have you heard Rod Laver?
Yes.
That's good. That's good. Before we came on, let's go with number 3 was playing number 13. Andy Fitzell, these podcasts, it says the show must go on. Deminor, how do you pronounce his name? Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, Australian kid. He's fast. He's really fast.
Oh my word, is he fast? Medvedev. Medvedev, I think all junior tennis players should listen to his interviews. He is so honest. Thomas Jefferson, number 2. The 2 things you have to have: integrity and humor. Johnson, what do you know about those 2 guys? I know that you were in that juvie center for 2 years. Can you tell us anything about those 2 guys?
Medvedev.
I mean,
Who's the other guy?
Deminor, the Australian. But actually, he spent a lot of time in Spain. His father and mother went back and forth, so he spent a lot of time on the red dirt, and and he's not a rich kid. I mean, Red, where his parents were in the restaurant business, working the floor and car wash, and but yeah, I think that's a good combination to spend some time in the red dirt and get over and play on the grass. Anything about their games?
Medvedev, big serve. Goes after a second serve.
He's 6'6". He's a little taller than you, a little better looking.
A little taller, moves incredibly well for his size.
I don't know. Let's talk about his movement. He does move really well for a big guy, but he's so gangly. And one of the reasons he's great, I love to read about character. People come to see me for technique, but it's all about character. If you can't teach character, you can't teach technique anyway. But so many people told him he had no chance. They told him, you're not going to be a pro tennis player. And he's proved them all wrong. It's really amazing. But he's got the Jimmy Connors thing. What does Jimmy Connors do, Johnson, as far as footwork goes?
Moves his feet
And gets behind the ball. And here's something, Coach, with your players is don't let them call the ball with their eyes. They got to call the ball with their feet. Even though when a kid knows the ball is going to be out, if they did this you can write that down, Johnson?
Yeah.
So if they know the ball is going to be out, they don't just stand in the middle of the court flat footed and go out or put their finger up because they don't even have presence on the court to say out. Is they run and they get their tail behind that ball. And, Roger Federer, Lynette Federer, rule number one, never let the ball bounce twice. And Jimmy Connors, Gloria, like get behind the ball. That guy, when you
Well, Medvedev catches the ball when it's out on like the second bounce. He just like slides in and gets it, doesn't he?
Yeah, no, he's just right there. He just catches the ball. It's out, catches it, and hands it to the ball boy. That guy, I saw David Ferrero. I think he's a Davis Cup captain now, right?
I think so, yeah.
But he was in
New York, yeah.
He's in New York. He's watching all the Spaniards play. And for our listeners, the kids, I know you would know the story, but kids, if their parents were listening, he was going to quit tennis. And the grandfather said, well, let's have you do this first. And he was supposed to push a wheelbarrow, fill it up, dirt, push it for 2 weeks. He quit after 10 weeks, came back, was the hardest worker in tennis. But they called him the dog, Barrow, because he just would chase everything down. But no, Deminor.
He's my year. He wasn't top 5 junior in Spain.
Deminor.
Ferrer.
David Ferrer.
Ferrer was not a top 5 junior in Spain. He's 82. He was behind Lopez, Verdasco, all those guys. Rebreda. They were miles ahead of him.
Of course, Nadal thinks so highly of him. Nadal says he's the best player who never won a major. But yeah, amazing tennis player. But Deminor was up a set, and it was close in the second set when we went on the air. But with I think one thing about Deminor is that I think that he's a great inspiration for the little guys. He's not that big a guy, and what's the name of the player from Belgium? David Goffin.
Goffin. He's back as well. Sure, yeah, he's back playing.
They're very similar. But Deminor, he has that reset swing on the backhand side.
Mm-hmm.
For our listeners, it's not wrong. He times it.
Mm-hmm.
He's got Bjorn Borg had a reset backhand. He took the racket low and high. It's not wrong. And but it's what's most efficient, I think, with junior tennis players. If a coach can provide you the scientific rationale, the logic, awareness, acceptance, commitment, you just say, okay, I'm going for it. And then we talk about myelin. If you go for it, the brain switched on, you can improve at such a much faster rate. Let's do this, Coach. It's U.S. Open time. Let's end by giving Johnson some advice. I think one is do his class work, the school work first, make that a priority. Sit in the first row, go meet all his teachers, take notes, rewrite notes, work your tail off academically.
The freshman year, you will take the easiest classes and you will struggle the most academically.
Say that again.
The freshman year, you will take the easiest classes you take and you will struggle the most academically. Senior year, you will take the most difficult classes and you will find it the easiest academically. Freshmen just struggle with time management. All my freshmen are so busy, and my seniors just laugh at it. I have seniors who are pre-med, physics, this, that, and the other. But, one of my freshmen the other day said, "Oh, this comms class, it's tough." I said, "Yeah, everybody knows about freshman comms classes. That's where they really put the future Nobel Prize winners in there." But freshman year is a lot about learning time management, a lot of distractions. But if you can just learn the routines, and I'm sure like UCLA, like all the big schools now, they have the academic support staff, and really what they teach you is structure. I'm assuming when you were in prison the last 2 years, you didn't have internet, right?
We had a phone.
Phone in prison.
We had a phone.
Did you have? So you didn't have internet, and you survived, right?
We had internet, but
limited.
Hardly used it. Just was on sending messages.
That's the thing, is just managing your time. The first year is just learning how to manage your time. That's where freshmen struggle. And if you can get through that, it's not that hard.
All right.
Yeah, time management. We've met the enemy is us. I remember as a kid being told, when the bell rings, just go right to the next class and sit in the first row. Don't you don't need the 10 minutes to go from one class to the next. I mean, sometimes obviously in the campus you do. And then also have a desktop calendar and you just write down, okay, this is what I have to do.
Don't ride those stupid scooters. Don't ride the scooters. Walk or get a bike. Don't ride those stupid. I hate those scooters.
Yeah, we
hate them.
We sign off. I could tell them about my experience with. I've had players play at West Point, play at Navy, play at Air Force, and the life of a plebe. You run from one class to the next. You take 21 hours. But yeah, you want to stay away from the loser blues. There's going to be so many people who want to bring you down, just talking about how tough it is. And but also too, I think is find the extra time. I mean, okay, am I hitting 100 serves? I mean, well, it can't be 100. Is he hitting extra serves every day? Is he hitting targets? You know, I obviously at UCLA, it's such a big time with. I mean, you know, just like where you're working in the Power 5 schools, it's like an Olympic village. But to take advantage of it, but
the extra time is in the mornings. It's not going to be late at night. And the one thing I know about freshmen is they don't eat breakfast. Freshmen get up 4.5 seconds before they need to be somewhere. They rush, and they're hungry, and they get hangry, and then they're moody, and then they get tired. Get up, eat breakfast. Like the extra time is before. It's not going to be at the end of your day. At the end of your day, there's a lot of things going on in big schools. You've got to get up and eat breakfast and start the day right. And even if you do a lot of things wrong, if you can get off to a decent start, you'll be okay.
Here's a great joke for you. I heard this from a funny comedian. Why do teenage boys eat Pop-Tarts? They're too lazy to go get the milk. And the Pop-Tart is just like the sweet, sugary cereals, the bagel that Johnson had. With I went away to boarding school, so I'm 15 years old, and I remember my parents, hey, we've paid for breakfast, you go to breakfast. It's like, okay, but it's pretty easy to keep your head on the pillow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, tempting.
Yeah, I used to tell people when they use an alarm clock is take the snooze button and throw it away, because if you snooze, you lose. And it really, in the end, is not painful to get up early. I mean, it's just not painful. Yeah, it is nice to stand a little bit longer, but close connection between getting up in the morning and getting up in the world. What other advice? One more thing for the redhead going to the big time UCLA, the blue and gold. I did tell him, I got this from Mark Hammond, a longtime friend. We got to get him on the podcast. Yeah, I said, Johnson, this is a Mark Hammond. Yeah, he's going to UCLA, University College, Lower Alabama. But I can remember just hanging out at the track at UCLA, and the New Zealander, John Walker, he was one of the best in the world. It's just amazing, the athletes. I don't know if it's that way anymore, but no, I can remember being in a dual match watching Elliot Telcher play John McEnroe. It was pretty cool to work for Vic Braid in Southern Cal back in the day. So anything else for this young man? You know the family?
Give me something good, Dave.
Buy a bike.
Buy a bike.
A bike.
Buy a bike. Bill Walton used to ride the bike around UCLA, right? He turned out okay.
Yeah. And when you ride a bike, don't listen to music. It's amazing.
I read that recently. They asked Jordan, why do you think you could jump so high? I don't know. He said, all I ever did was try to dunk, and I just rode a bike everywhere. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah. With, what a lot of kids do, which is so stupid, is when they run with traffic behind them, and they're listening to music. And now drivers, text messaging. It's like, you guys don't even know how to run to the tennis facility. You actually always face traffic. I mean, if there's a sidewalk, fair enough, but Coach, anything you want to have Johnson, you want him to sing or dance, or what do you want to do? Tell a joke? Why don't you say?
I'm just happy that the parole committee let him out.
Yeah.
I think obviously Joey wrote a very nice letter to let him out. But I think I'm glad he went and did that. It's an interesting experience. It's something obviously you and I don't really understand as much, Steve. But travel and being in a different culture is going to help you on a tennis court later in life.
Yeah. No, I don't really like having been in. I've been in some countries where teaching tennis, and there's one group of kids that are picking balls up, and another group of kids that are hitting balls. It's not my favorite place to be, but I can remember being in Surabaya, Indonesia, and I was with Danny Cooper. And I said, Cooper, this is going to be rude, but we're not going to lunch. I said, even though our hosts will be a little bit, maybe offended, but we're going to stay here and teach the kids that are actually sleeping in piano boxes outside the court. Unbelievable.
Different. You'll learn a lot more doing. I mean, Spencer obviously weren't able to be on the tennis court the last couple of years as much as you want to be, but you certainly learn some things that are going to help you play tennis under pressure.
Yeah, I play better. I've had 3 kids do this. I've told many kids, and I think once kids turn 16, that would be the best thing for a U.S. American tennis kid when they turn 16 is take the summer work at McDonald's. Back in the day, even when I grew up with wealthy kids, everybody got a job. Everybody got a job. Johnson, something profound. You end this podcast, Johnson. Think you can do it, Coach Secker?
I don't trust that boy.
Something profound.
Something profound. Something that will go right on the bathroom wall. Andy Fitzell wanted to break this crazy record. A lot of people want to listen to podcasts. If we could break the record, we're just waiting for John to say something so profound.
Tennis. I would say tennis is a privilege to play.
That's good. That's fantastic. How's it go? Tennis is not your right. Tennis is your privilege. Spencer Johnson, thank you very much. Good luck at UCLA. It's great to have you here visiting. It's great to have you on the podcast. Coach Secker, people love it when you're on the podcast. Let's stay in touch and let's keep being part of it.
I'll see you soon. We'll be heading up north to Virginia soon. I'll bring the clan up.
Yeah,
we're not far away.
Yeah, we got a place with 8 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms. We'll host your team. But
I got 8 friends.
But down the road, I'll probably talk to you in 2 days. Anyway, thanks again. Adios, amigos.
Take care.
Podcast. Good night. All the best to your family.
Good night.
All right, I just tell our listeners the only reason we have him on, Johnson, he's got an English accent. What do you think?
I think
Don't you think that's the only reason we have him on?
I think so too.
No, he's fun to listen to, a bright guy, and fun to have on. Smart guy. Learn from Dave Secker. More, how's it go? More golden nuggets for the tennis treasure chest. Everybody say U.S. Open 3 times. Go ahead. U.S. Open. U.S. Open.
U.S. Open.
You have several more days of the U.S. Open. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll still be U.S. Open time, right? All right. Adios, amigos. Over and out. Wave goodbye to the camera. We're done. Thank you.